Hello, my name is Tara All, and I am here with EA Zoom meetings. And today we are going to talk about Jupiter. The title for today is You Are Jupiter. And for anyone who is not already familiar with my current work, I've been working on a series called We Are the Planets. And there is a playlist for that through the EA Zoom meeting YouTube channel. And basically, this all spurred from a number of years ago. I was doing what's called open heart work with Adam Gainsbourg, and was also practicing astrology and continuing to go deeper and learning more astrology. And I was getting stuck in my head a lot. I have a South Node in Gemini, and so cerebral is kind of my world a lot of the time. And I wanted a way to work with astrology that was a little bit more experiential. And Adam's suggestion was to try moving planets to the first. And this is not a new technique. In fact, if you work with solar fire in the same place that you go to choose the house systems, you can go, instead of choosing Porphyry or Placidus, you can choose Venus first, Sun first, whichever planet you want to do first. And it basically rotates that planet to the ascendant. And the purpose of doing this, at least for me, is to choose to have a new experience of yourself. For me, all of the planets, at least the personal planets, represent facets of our psyche. And so essentially all these parts are happening all the time and in alchemy with each other. But we tend to have ones that we go to first. Like, I might kind of be like a go-to Saturn Mercury person. And that's kind of the filter that I sort of see life through and that I approach life through. And so if I wanted to bring out, for example, more of my feeling quality, more of finding more pleasure in life, focusing more on harmony in relationships, maybe being more in my body, then choosing Venus first could be a super awesome thing, because that would then switch that lens or filter, that approach I take to the world from the mercurial Saturnian standpoint and moves it more into a Venusian way. So anyhow, 4 or 5 years ago, I started this, and it really works for me. And I pick a planet for an entire year. You don't have to pick it for the whole year. Lots of people that I've worked with and continue to communicate with have done it for shorter periods of time. But it can be really revealing when you all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to pick, let's just say in this case, we're going to talk about Jupiter today, right? Let's say that maybe Jupiter type qualities are things that are difficult for you to bring out in your life. Maybe you have Jupiter as a skip step. Maybe it's retrograde. Maybe just in general, you have a hard time kind of going big and having that big confidence to move forward in life. And maybe you tend to be a little more worried about risk and you self-protect a little bit more. It's like Jupiter wants us to take a leap, and we'll get into that. So if that's the case, then choosing Jupiter first can be this amazing time to say, okay, I've got this part in me, because none of us is missing any of these parts in ourselves. We all have inner Jupiter. Jupiter in the sky in the solar system is reflecting that part, that quality in us, as above, so below. So in this case, choosing Jupiter first can be almost like a remedy, a remedy to help us further integrate, further become more whole, and to bring all these pieces together. So anyway, this is, so in each of these We Are the Planets videos, I give a little blurb at the beginning because I want you to have a context for where this comes from. The choosing the planet first, for me, every year that I've chosen a different planet, I've had an entirely different experience of myself. And the things in my material world, the things around me that happen, truly reflected that. Like the year that I chose Mercury first, I got a job. I got my current job at Sage Goddess as a full-time writing lead and astrologer there. And it was a very Mercury type of thing. When I chose Venus first, the first time I met my current partner, I met the love of my life. And so, and in my Mars first year, I had a lot of experiences where I was really called to have to take the initiative. And I even had combative types of things come up that gave me a chance to say, you know, can I stand up for myself? Can I do it with honor? Can I do it still with compassion? So for me, when I choose a planet first, life gives me experiences that let me get deeper into that part of me. And so that's given me greater depth and understanding with myself. And it also gives me opportunity to go a new direction. So one of the biggest things about choosing a planet first is, you know, you kind of like open up all these doors that maybe were not even necessarily closed before, but you just didn't see them. Because, for example, you know, if you approach life always from a Mercury standpoint, you don't always see what Venus would see. And your Venus is different than someone else's Venus. And the only way you really find out how that is to really spend some time with the archetypes. And so I'm a big fan of spending time with the archetypes. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see here. Okay, we should be good here. All right, so you are Jupiter. And I want to encourage everyone with the planets, and we're going to go through lots of words, lots of associations, and then we have a volunteer today who's got just super strong Jupiter in her chart, and Monika is going to share some of how that feels for her, just kind of on a day-to-day basis, because this idea with you are Jupiter is to get personal with it. You know, what does it feel like when you're in your Jupiter? How do you know from moment to moment when, you know, it's your sun or your moon or Jupiter or Venus leading? And how then can you sort of tune into that energy so that you can bring it forward in moments when it really is the most advantageous for you? All right, so here we go. Okay, so this is my, in preparation for, I only have only five slides. So I have been trying to move away some from too much left brain information so that there's room for things just to arise. And part of, for me, how that happens is through some drawing and brainstorming and mind mapping in different pieces. So yesterday I was feeling into Jupiter, and I'm going to share, it's interesting. So I've done the moon, I've done your the moon, I've done your Mercury, I've done your Venus, I've done your Mars. And then I knew that Jupiter was coming. And then I got sick. I've been sick with that whatever virus that so many people have had. And so that kind of had me down. But at the same time, like, I don't know, Jupiter was this big looming presence. And every time I thought about doing your Jupiter, it just kind of felt like too much to bite off and definitely too much to digest. And so personally in my chart, I have, of course, since my south node is in Gemini, my north node is in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter for me is retrograde and a skip step. So it does have an interesting quality for me. And I find myself, you know, when I advise people about choosing a planet first, I go right to things like that, retrogrades, skip steps, and I say, oh, this is, you know, you should go rock this out for a year. Interestingly enough, every year that I have reapproached choosing a planet first, I have contemplated Jupiter, knowing how important it is in my personal development. And but I haven't been ready to take that full thing on yet. So I'm going to talk about it today, but I'm going to fully disclose that I haven't lived a year Jupiter first. So this particular drawing yesterday, I was like, okay, I'm going to do, you know, another little doodle on what the planets feel like in me, you know. And you know, it's funny, like you can see my Mercury. That for those of you who, you know, are not visually looking at this, whatever, I've got like Mercury's holding a wand and looks kind of like sort of like a wise magician, which, you know, I relate to really easily. And you know, the moon is curvy feminine energy, and the sun is smiling and shining, and Venus is, you know, beautiful and, you know, wearing a nice gown. Mars looks kind of like a crazy kid, but, you know, that's kind of how I relate to my Mars. And then I have this big black giant, it's the biggest face, you know, in my drawing in the corner. It's got stars all over its forehead, and it's not that it looks ominous or anything, but you know, it's dark, and that was my Jupiter. Just came out that way, Jupiter. And it's funny, I was showing my partner yesterday, and I was like, okay, guess which each of these planets are. He's not an astrologer. And so he went through guessing them, and then you know did not guess that my big black planet, dark planet, was Jupiter. And I'm like, well, that's my Jupiter. And he's like, he's a Sagittarius, by the way. He says, well, oh, my Jupiter is much lighter to me. And he's like, your Jupiter is very much a shadow Jupiter. And I'd never called it that myself, but it's true. I think I am definitely working with in some respects, just a shadow Jupiter, which makes sense, right? Something retrograde and skip step and ruler of my North Node, and something to be coming into. So definitely for me, there's this, it's almost like this feeling of Jupiter's too much. And in general, you know, Jupiter does, I'm going to go ahead and move the slide here. Jupiter does certainly rule expansion. You know, it's everything getting bigger, things growing, even physically. We find, fat to be associated with Jupiter. You know, it's common during Jupiter transits, or just in strong Jupiter signatures. You know, it's you know, we like to eat well and live well and enjoy what we do. And so Jupiter definitely has this expansiveness, not just in expanding our consciousness, which of course is a big part of it, but also just like expanding our physical being. You know, it's almost like how much life can we take in, because Jupiter wants to take in more and more life. And maybe that's part of the thing for me that sometimes feels a little bit scary, you know, the how much can we really take in? Yeah. And so if you come from a more Saturn approach to things, there can be much more, it's funny, like we think about, so Jupiter, you know, fun, excitement, and adventure. And it's easy for us to say, oh, you know, those are all the good things. And then the Saturnian more, you know, work hard, a little more restricted, a little more contracted, a little more almost folded in on itself, you know, more rigidity seems to not be the favorite thing. But I gotta say that, you know, this whole idea of like the things, whatever things are good or bad, you know, those are just subjective judgments we make about them. A lot of it for us comes down to what we're comfortable with. And if we're comfortable with the more Saturn focus on things, then Jupiter is frightening, you know. And I think we oftentimes we don't give ourselves credit for, I guess, like how hard it sometimes is to do the things that are the most fun, the things that are the most exciting, or the things that are the most liberating, right? I mean, we talk about sometimes like getting out of our old patterns and, you know, breaking through old habits and letting go of all that stuff and moving forward. But there's actually an element of that is terrifying, because we don't know what it's like if we choose that side. And Jupiter very much is asking us to have faith and to believe that it will be okay if we take the leap, you know? But we won't know until we try. That's kind of the tricky thing with Jupiter. Jupiter is associated with luck, you know, and we talk about, and treasure oftentimes too. And, but this idea with luck and with Jupiter, for me, it's not so much that Jupiter, let me say it this way. Luck with Jupiter comes because you're available. You know, you're available for life. You know, you get out of the house and you go to the place, or, you know, you make yourself available for life to bless you with moments of good fortune. So there is a lot to do with Jupiter, or tied up in that luck of us being willing to get out of the place that we normally stay in and to move into something more expansive, so we can receive something more expansive, you know. So taking the risk is a big thing with Jupiter. Jupiter in the Tarot corresponds with the Wheel of Fortune card, and the Wheel of Fortune card, right, is typically always things moving in fortunate directions, but you have to go with the wheel. Do you know, if you stay stuck and don't let the wheel move, it won't matter how much treasure is coming around it, you won't get there. So it's like the Jupiter treasure and luck is always available for us, but we create the obstacles that get in our way of reaching it, you know, which is the case with everything. Um, so some other things about Jupiter. So Jupiter has a lot to do with levity, you know, so things rising up. So in general, when we think about Jupiter, motivation, inspiration, all of the sort of affirmations that we speak or work with, the mantras that are, I am capable, I rise above, I trust my intuition, you know, the universe has my back. All these things are very Jupiterian in nature. And um, this idea of hope with Jupiter is a big one. I've been reading Stephen Forrest's book on the fire signs, the life givers, and he is talking about how, Eckhart Tolle and many of spiritual practices are about staying in the moment, right? Staying in the moment, staying in the now, because now is where everything is happening, which I fully believe. You know, I believe that the past and the future converge in the present, and that being present in the moment is where you actually have agency. But what's interesting about Jupiter, Stephen Forrest was saying that this idea of hope is actually antithetical to this needing to be present in your moment, because hope actually creates a window for something different to happen. And so we need both. You know, like we need to be in our moment, but at the same time, we do need to believe. We do need to believe that there could be something more or something better. And this is different than this type of hope I'm talking about is not this, like just hanging on a thread, waiting for something to get better. I'm talking more about creating a space for something else to show up. Because when we create space for things, and Jupiter ruling expansion rules spaciousness, when we create space for something, that's when it can reveal itself. So hope's important, and hope is tied with vision, which is another Jupiter thing. Having a vision for things, having aspirations for things. When we work with Jupiter, and when we truly choose Jupiter, or in those Jupiter moments, like we're willing to bet the bank. Like we have that much confidence in either what we want or what's coming or what we believe or whatever the thing may be, that we're willing to really go for it. And the thing is that it's the being willing to really go for it, that's what seals the deal. Like that itself is the wheel of fortune, being available for that to happen. Some other things about Jupiter that maybe you don't normally think about, because in this slide I have a little mind map for those of you who can't see it, and some of the things that most of us all know are confidence, growth, philosophy, exaggeration, indulgence, faith, meaning, wisdom, beliefs, especially believing in yourself, compensation, joy, truth, fat, and flavor, which by the way is a big one to think about, because life is just not very fun without some fat and flavor, truly. It's like we talk about Saturn rules alignment and structure, and Saturn, keeps our, hold us up with our bones, and all of those connective tissues. But if we didn't have any fat on our butts, like we couldn't even sit down. So in some respects, a lot of the enjoyment, and then of course the flavor in life comes with the Jupiter element, and we need both, of course. And then travel and journeys, and I emphasize this, all journeys with Jupiter, because we think about physical travel, and that's certainly part of it, but what the Jupiter in us needs is to travel to uncharted territory. And you can do that in your mind. You can take a spiritual journey. You can take a plant medicine journey. You can go through your imagination. There's different ways to go on a journey, but this getting out of the space that you're normally in is really what is required with Jupiter. You know, in many ways, it is the adventure into the unknown, beyond what you have already known. Okay, so in mythology, Jupiter, the god Jupiter, king of the gods, his totem is the eagle. And the eagle is representative in Native American tradition, Great Spirit itself. And certainly it's representative of our higher selves, of our soaring spirit, of our ability to see above. But in particular, it's the connection between humans and the divine. And so one thing that I have been playing around with Jupiter is the idea of Jupiter being the spirit ruler of our natal chart. And of course, we all have a traditional ruler of our chart. And so I'm not talking about the same function here. I'm talking about the ruler of kind of our spiritual self, or the bridge between our earth material physical body self and our spiritual self. So I know for me, at least in my work with Jupiter, Jupiter represents our path, or the way, your way. And this idea of a path with Jupiter. So for example, whatever sign your Jupiter is in the natal chart, you can think about this as the path, how you move through life, how you can best naturally move through life. And so it doesn't matter what kind of circumstance you're going through, Jupiter, by sign, house, aspect, that path is going to be the most natural way for you to move. And so, and so when you get into your own energy flow, in other words, kind of when you get into your own frequency of how you move most naturally through life, you can apply that to any situation, and it helps things flow more easily. And again, this is part of the theme with Jupiter, is being in the flow, going with the flow, going with the energy, you know, rising with the inspiration. And it's the same for ourselves. You know, so for example, you know, if Jupiter is in Gemini, a big part of that path is going to be through communication, through thinking about things, through seeing the two sides of things, through thinking things out and solving the puzzle and learning, you know. And so even when you're in a situation which doesn't seem like a very Jupiter or Gemini situation at all, I mean, maybe you're balancing your checkbook, or maybe you're having to, I don't know, paint your house, there still is something to be said about that Jupiter and Gemini path. Because how can you learn in whatever situation you're in? Do you know, how can you bring out that quality? Because it is kind of your natural way through. And if you watch people kind of move through life too, like from a little bit of a bigger lens, you can see this Jupiter part of them. You know, it's almost like the overarching spiritual flow of how they go, which makes sense, right? Because Jupiter we link with beliefs. So of course, you know, that's part of it, but it's not just what we believe, you know, it's also how we naturally connect with ourselves. Does anyone have anything they want to add at this point? If anyone has anything, it'd be awesome if you jump in, even any just different ideas about Jupiter. One thing that I'm not doing this time, is I'm not linking Sagittarius in the 9th house in with Jupiter. And those archetypes are certainly related, but I have been trying to move away from that, because there definitely are distinctions between planets, signs, and houses. And so I'm trying to kind of stay exclusively Jupiter here. But, you know, these words and things we're talking about, you know, are going to apply in many times to the 9th house and to Sagittarius. But I think in my mind, like for planets are free agents, you know, like they're doing what they do. And Sagittarius, for example, it's coming from the sign Scorpio and it's moving towards the sign Capricorn. So it has different influences in there. And also it's just a different archetype to work with. Okay, well, if no one has anything, I'm going to move on. Oh, please speak up.
Hi. I was wondering what you might have to say about Jupiter in the ninth and Sagittarius, just in a general way. How do you have any thoughts? Maybe you don't.
Oh, you mean Jupiter in Sag in the ninth house altogether?
Yeah.
Well, certainly that's like the purest it gets, right? I mean, of all those archetypes together. Are you thinking like in a natal chart or just in
Yes.
general?
Right now, well, always it's natal, and right now it's transiting, and it's my Jupiter return. But I was just wondering,
Oh,
yeah,
wow. So, what I always think is when you have a planet in its own sign in its own house, the first thing I think is, wow, I must have come into this lifetime to really do this, you know?
yeah,
Um, because there's just, there's like nothing even to mess with the purity of the archetypes. Like there's not even, it's just 100% do all that. And then being in the return as well. Are you, let me ask, I have a question for you. It, does your Jupiter tend to manifest like in physical expansion travel, or is it more of an internal kind?
it's more of an internal. I'm a lifetime learner. I'm 71, and I'm just one of my delights is to just go on webinars and learn about all things astrology, myths, you know, just continuing. So, really, the expansion, especially now, um, is internal.
Yeah. I think it's so important that that we, I think sometimes in general, and maybe not so much in our EA community because, we really get so psychological and deep into ourselves, but in general, I think that gets lost with these archetypes. People just expect to see, those of us who have strong Jupiter or Sagittarius just traveling all over the world or doing these things. Um, and that's just one way to do it. I guess another thing that comes to me as far as these three all being together is, for me, Jeffrey Wolf Green always speaks of the idea of natural law, linked with these archetypes. And for me, it's so much to do with personal truth. Any of us who are working with strong Sagittarius, Jupiter, ninth house, especially all together, we're trying to get back to that more natural sense of who we are, the truth of who we are, and then the greater context of who we are. Um, and how we get there or find that can be really different. Um, but in my experience, and I'm partially speaking from my North Node in Sagittarius that is in the ninth house,
Mm.
um, a lot of that has been sometimes getting uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
And that uncomfortability is not always taking a trip somewhere, but sometimes just even getting uncomfortable, even within myself, or pushing myself to explore places or things that I haven't, because I don't know another way to find my authentic self. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
you can't find it where you've already been. That's the thing. And when you have Jupiter, Sag, ninth house all together, your dharma is the unknown, you know? And I think that with every single doorway you go through, even let's say it's just going to be webinars for the rest of your life. Every webinar you go to, like
Yes.
becomes another portal. And and then every portal, even if you only take away one tiny thing from it, you get like a little bit of you back through that. And I think it's like you have to leave to come home. That's how I always feel about these archetypes. With Sagittarius and Jupiter in the ninth house, you have to leave to come home. And the home, I mean, is like within ourselves. Yeah.
I really agree with that and identify with it. I've served a lot in the outer world, and in my retirement years, I'm coming home to me.
Yeah.
It's just the last 6 months or so been, oh, this is very good. So
And
thank you.
yeah, thank you for sharing. I really, I think like we cannot overemphasize how much the inner journey, the inner journey is it's a very powerful thing.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any? Monica, do you have anything early before we get to your chart later?
Not yet. Thank
Okay. Holding the good stuff for later, huh?
you. Absolutely. I don't want to be too Jupiter.
well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But when I looked at your chart, I started looking at the aspects. I thought, whoa, I could just probably shadow you for a year, and you would change my shadow Jupiter right into a brilliant, bright, sparkly Jupiter. But no, here's the thing. I don't know how you guys all feel, but I feel like there's like the bigger the thing, and Jupiter's a big thing, and I don't just mean big in the sky, but like Jupiter is a big concept. It's big no matter how we look at it. And anytime we take on something big, the bigger the thing, the brighter the thing, the bigger the shadow. I mean, that's just how it is. So I know in my classes years ago with Lauren Albandian, when she would talk about Sagittarius, she would talk about how people look at Sag as being, happy and bright and positive. And she said, but truly Sagittarius has like the greatest mood swings from, super high, everything is awesome, it's the best, to like, it's the lowest of the depths and deepest and, feeling in the dumps. And I think that, if we just think of even just, natural laws of the universe, I mean, as far as something swings up, it's going to have that far to swing down. So, yeah. All right, so when you're thinking about Jupiter, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this because I want to have plenty of time to talk about with Monica and about the chart, and even just reading more people's input, because the whole idea with us, you are Jupiters, the more of us who talk about how Jupiter is for us, I feel like that's almost like the best medicine for getting us into Jupiter space. But for me, when I think about Jupiter in the signs, and we don't have time to go through in the houses and all the aspects, but here's kind of what I've offered here. When you're looking at Jupiter in your sign, where and how can you go further, bigger, and have the potential to fly? And also, it's the domain of consciousness that you have come here to be a god or goddess in. And for me, that second part, because for me, I look at the signs as domains of consciousness. That's one way I look at them. And so whatever sign your Jupiter is in, that is your domain. Jupiter is king of the gods. So that is the domain that you have come in with the ability on some level to be a god, goddess, king, queen, whatever word you like in that area. And to me, that's exciting because that brings you more intimately into that path or that way that is yours, that is represented by Jupiter. That spirit ruler, that's your spirit ruler's domain. So when we're thinking about Aries, of course, we're thinking about things like personal power. We're thinking about leadership, initiation, self-assertion, courage, action, even physical strength. And in Taurus, we're looking at things like self-sufficiency, stability, beauty, abundance, right? I mean, think about with Taurus being god or goddess of a domain of consciousness where all things material being all physical resources multiply and grow. It's not just money, but it's one of them. The ability to be truly abundant and to be physically embodied is another part of Taurus. Gemini, then curiosity and flexibility and using the mind to figure things out and to problem solve, to be able to see two sides of things. I always think of Gemini as the bridge builder, right? So if your Jupiter is in Gemini, your goddess of the domain of consciousness, it builds bridges between things. You have the ability to connect things. that's a powerful thing. Language is just one way that we connect things. So there's many, many ways to connect things. The power of your thoughts, the power of your mind. We think about the Hermetic principles, that everything is created from the mind, at least in our physical dimension. And then with Cancer, we move into the inner world, emotions, creating home and family, nurturing and healing. Cancer is also very much about psychological growth. So this whole idea of like inner work is big with Cancer. And also symbols and images. So with Cancer, I think of it, it's very much connected to the primordial water, the source that we all come from. So the archetypes themselves, the symbols, these whatever we call the language of the soul is something that's naturally inclined to Cancer. With Leo, we come into creativity, to sharing oneself and loving vulnerably. That's the key with Leo, is to be vulnerable and to come from the heart and to be true and to be willing to risk how it's received. Because with Leo, it really doesn't count unless it is authentic and vulnerable on some level. In other words, it's not about just putting on a show because everyone's going to like it. It's on putting on a show about what's authentically in your heart and having that be received, and then doing the same for others. And for all of us who have been in spaces when that's happened, either being the one being received or receiving others, that's a powerful thing in those moments when someone really opens their heart and reveals that, and you're part of that moment. So Leo also certainly all forms of creativity and self-expression. Okay, and then with Virgo, skills, techniques, craftsmanship, healing, accuracy, discernment, so many things. I'm going to pick up the pace because I realize that I'm running on. Libra, of course, relationships, all things about relationships, partnerships. This can be mediating, cooperating, collaborating, whatever that can look like. Also symmetry, art, balance. So this idea of creating beautiful environment. In the same way that we can create beautiful relationships between people, we can create beautiful relationships between different colors, different symbols, different pieces of clothing, different furniture in a house. You all get the picture. But that's the domain for Jupiter and Libra. That you truly are here as a god or goddess to share that with others. Because one thing I didn't say earlier, that Jupiter, with the idea of it bridging the earthly self with the spiritual self, it is very much a part of contributing to society, making society better for all of us, for finding ways to give back, to be generous, to share one's wisdom. So if for going with this idea, this made up idea that if you're a god or goddess of this domain of consciousness, then it would be, you'd be here to represent that part and to share that part and to in some ways connect people with the higher frequencies of that sign, which I believe is part of a Jupiter thing, connecting us with the higher frequencies, the higher levels, the higher meaning, the higher truth, the higher purpose, right? So if you take, for example, Scorpio, going beneath the surface, psychological depth, empowerment, confronting limits, being able to push through and transform. Sagittarius, expansion of consciousness, and this is being Jupiter's own sign, so there's definitely overlap here. But freedom, exploring the unknown, finding the truth, especially one's own, your personal truth, what is true for you, and to live what is true for you. To live in accordance with your own nature. That is a very Jupiter thing and a very Sagittarius thing. To live true to you, to be true to you. And then with Capricorn, we have, of course, manifesting great works. Capricorn is a great manifester, truly, of the zodiac. And not that that's definitely shared with Taurus, but this idea of great works definitely falls into Capricorn. accountability, the wisdom that's earned through experience of having lived through life, gone through hard times and good times, and continued persevering and developed the wisdom of an elder. And then, of course, meeting your goals. Okay. Aquarius, authenticity, vision for the future, innovation, being progressive and helping society to progress forward, helping the underdog, helping people that don't have what they need or who have been overlooked or oppressed. Right? This is the idea of liberation, liberation in the interest of moving towards something better. The combination of Jupiter and Aquarius together is very inspiring for what can happen, what can come to be, and how we can better use our resources in ways that are more efficient, that are better for the environment, and that provide for everyone. So, and then finally to Pisces, compassion, imagination. This is, the world of dreams when we're in Pisces. But the thing about Pisces is, Pisces is getting us ready to transition to the next cycle of something. Pisces almost always is involved with reaching a new level of consciousness, so there's almost like an altered feeling when we have strong Pisces, or there's a Pisces influence going on in our lives. The idea of miracles and magic and things that defy reason and logic or our understanding of reality. So the great mystery, the great beyond, and then all the inspired types of arts and works that come from being in touch with that spirit consciousness, if you will. All right, so I think that's enough Jupiter jabber. Monika, why don't you unmute yourself? I'm gonna pop your chart up here. I have a couple notes. And let's just tell people, first of all, because I know if you're like me, you probably listen. I know for me, I listen a lot more than I watch to Zoom meetings. So for EA Zoom meetings. So Monika has got, and this is, she volunteered. So this is the thing. I said, okay, 2 criteria for volunteers. Either someone who wants to bring out more Jupiter, which actually is that's the type of volunteers I usually get. I said, or someone who's just rocking it so well that they're ready to share their experiences and wisdom with us, and that's Monika. Like she has been embodying Jupiter, and so she's going to be, I guess, our living Jupiter first example today. But she has Jupiter in the 3rd house in Taurus, and it's conjunct the Sun and conjunct Mercury. That's its main placement, but she's got Jupiter sextile the North Node, trine the South Node. She has it trine her Uranus-Pluto conjunction. She has it sextile Saturn, and it's opposing the Moon, that's the ruler of her North Node. And to add to the fun party, we know that transiting Uranus has been having a heyday with it. So, it's gone past it. It's gonna go back and hit it again, and then it's gonna hit it again. So, Monika, before I say anything else, why don't you just share with us how it feels to be you, so we can know what a Jupiter first person truly feels like and experiences life.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. This is something I like to do. It's a very Jupiterian thing to just jump and want to go ahead. I think that I have learned how it feels to be me when I compare to the others, because I hear many times from a lot of people that I'm too much. I'm too much joy. I'm too much optimism. I'm too much information. I just, I have a big appetite for living, for anything. That's the one word that I could say. I'm hungry to live every moment, to experience, to know. Since I remember, like always, I learned to read when I was like 3 years old. I was reading. I asked for birthday presents. Mommy, can I have the Britannica Encyclopedia? I don't want to have anything else, or trips. I would always ask her to buy me plane tickets to go somewhere. So I always been here, there. My imagination is huge. It's huge. It's just, I don't think that anything is not possible. So that's what it is. It feels a lot. I have 3 siblings, so I also had to learn to tone myself down a little bit because I got kicked out of school. I got kicked out of everywhere, mostly when I showed too much eagerness about being in the moment. Like I'm always studying and I'm always asking for things, and I'm just too curious. I just, I could live a day of 48 hours, no problem.
So let's say you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And let's say it's an important decision. Important, like, I don't know, maybe you need to move, or maybe you're going to begin really committing to a relationship, or maybe you need to end a relationship. Something I'm saying, or a job, something that's like big enough to matter, not just what you're going to eat for dinner. What is it that guides you in making decisions, would you say?
My intuition. I just trust my gut. Like I know what I like and I don't like immediately. Like don't ever try to give me a present. I will tell you immediately with like bad idea. I told my mom very early on, like, oh, look what I brought. She was like, Mom, please just give me the equivalent with money. With my ex-husbands, they all came with presents. First thing is like, don't just give me something else. Don't give me. So I immediately know, and it's like something that I feel, and I go no, and I know. I have learned to listen more and to just try not to have that face and to respond differently, because I know I can push a lot of people away with my being. So I say, okay, I hear you, but no. It's just like, I would love that, but no. So I know it. So it's intuition.
And so let's just say that your intuition says, yes, I should move to India.
Within
right?
5 days, I'm on the other side of the planet. That's how I moved to New York. I've been here 25 years. I made a decision over a weekend, and it was a funny decision. I mean, I was going through a lot of pain because of another relationship. And then I found a magazine with a friend of mine. We were spending some time at the beach house of somebody, and we just wanted to have like stupid little magazine, And then this person had like very intellectual things, and we couldn't just like, so I don't know. I found this magazine, art magazine about New York, and I kept on going like, oh, New York, New York. And then I started making fun, and I said, you see, it says that we should move to New York. And then I turned around, I was like, what if we move to New York? And she said, what if we do it? And I said, I'm going to move to New York. I came back to Bogota, where I come from. And I went and sat down with my mother, and I made a deal with her. And I said, I'm moving to New York in 3 months, and this is what I need. And I was here by that time. So when I make a decision, I immediately make it happen. It's almost like the magic wand that you had. I have that, but with my will. But that works very well when I'm alone. When I'm in situations that I'm together with somebody, it's not a good idea to use that, I don't know, like way of making things happen, because sometimes then I'm told that it's all about what I want. I have to learn to compromise that a little bit. But I think that I attract a lot of people that want me to show them the magic. How do you do this? And I go, I just think about it.
Well, it's interesting. You have Saturn in your first house, so clearly there's limits are a big deal. But but it's even interesting that even with some of those things, and and I just in general looking at your chart, and with the North Node being in Cancer, like there definitely is like definitely a I don't want to say a going down, but like water is like water. Water's always a little bit going down, and I don't mean going down in a bad way, but I mean, like it takes you down a little bit into a different territory, which for me, Jupiter naturally likes, the rise above. So have you experienced any of that for yourself with that?
For a long time before I really understood about astrology, and I started like having readings with somebody who already passed away. It was when I was around 30 years old that I started to be really interested in this kind of language. Because another thing, parenthesis, I learned many languages when I was little because I needed to communicate. So I speak 7 languages, just like that, because I wanted to. But I wanted to understand different kind of languages because I'm all about trying to decode this reality, try to understand it. And one of the things that it was very difficult for me to understand was my emotional reality. I'm an extremely emotional person. I feel everything and everybody, and that used to drag me down. It used to be, that was the water that you say, and because my Jupiter and my Sun is all like, and then the other one's like, ugh, it's like 40 people. So, but and also the one that because he's very direct. When I want something, it's that or nothing. So I had to learn how to deal with that. So I started understanding that I was living in this polarity, that it was very, very strong. This, the everything that is near my sun and my moon up there.
Yeah.
So I was fighting a lot between this Monika and that Monika, until I found this, like, first reading with this astrologer. He told me, you just have to integrate the two of them. It's not about this or that. You're always going to suffer if you go too much too earthy, or if you go too much the imagination and the emotions. You have to like figure something out. So of course I started to learn to do yoga. Like, I do a lot of things that have to do with my body, but at the same time I do a lot of things with my imagination. I'm an artist, so I kind of put everything back into the work. So I'm very much aware of it, but now I'm not scared of those emotions anymore, because I actually, one of my mantras that I use every day, you were talking about,
Mantras, yeah.
one of the mantras, I just my body, and I always go like this, and I say, I trust the way, because I really, my direction is have to have no direction whatsoever. I'm here and I know I'm going to do it. How? I just know. I just have to trust it and be in the moment. If I start getting a little bit worried, that's when everything goes upside down. So I really have to trust that there's no direction or fixed in the way, because I'm a seeker. I'm always looking for something, the next thing. So I always have to tell myself, it is not what you're seeking, is where you are right now. But this Jupiter is there every day trying to look for something else, something else to learn, somebody else to meet that is going to teach me something else. I love to learn things, and I'm a teacher as well, but I love the disciple and master relationship. I love that, and I had great teachers around me, and I'm devoted to when I like a subject, I'm devoted to it. So yeah.
What advice would you give to people who have a hard time being positive? And I don't necessarily mean, I don't mean people that are like, oh, like for you, it sounds like your natural quality of energy is very just bright, positive. Some people, that's just not their quality of energy. It's harder for them.
But I had, sorry to interrupt. I had years where I didn't feel like that, and it was horrible for me, because then it put me in a situation where I understood how depressed people feel every day. It gave me so much compassion to understand that not everybody has this natural way of being.
Yeah.
And it got me closer to understanding that I'm actually very, very fortunate. And one of the things that I do, and I teach a lot, and I tell people that the best way to actually really understand what positivism is to be grateful. That's like, I have this exercise I do every day. I ask people to text me in the morning 10 things they're really grateful for, because in understanding what you have, that's when you realize how fortunate you are. And it's an exercise that you have to do with yourself. So I also tell people to manifest their ideas into writing, to bring them down, to put them into the body, and so they can make it happen. So write things that are, that are happy or and also the emotions. So I teach about, you have to do it. And they ask me, do you do it? And I said, of course I have to do it too, because I already know that there are moments in my life when I won't feel the same. It's a natural thing, but life sometimes puts you situations where you're not feeling completely like on. I'm not on all the time, and not necessarily the last years. They were very hard.
Yeah, no, they're definitely like this, the idea of gratitude in general, right? The more that you are grateful, the more you find things to be grateful for. I mean, there's really something to be said for what we put our intention on, and what we put our attention into, we get. And so for me, such a bit, like I was talking about, the luck with Jupiter kind of works that way to me. It's like, you find what you want to find, like we will all do that. We could put ourselves all into the same room, and if I want to find grouchy people that don't like me, I will find them. you know, and if at the same time you want to find people who are super fun and inspiring, you will find them, you know.
Well,
And
but I have a Taurus thing that is about frequency and repetition. So in order for it to become real, I have to do it X amount of times, 21 days or whatever I use in order for this habit to become something that is part of my life. So because I think that everything, even in the moment, you have to be allowing that things may not happen the way you want, that as you grow up, you just really start realizing that not everything is like it was when I was 6, that I used to be such a brat. Like I really, when I think about it, I was a horrible kid. I was like, this is mine, so mine. This is for me, nothing for you. No, I don't.
it's very Taurus.
Oh, that's horrible. And I used to like tell girls in school, like, I don't want to be your friend. I don't like you. Like that. Like I was not really nice kid, but now I'm learning because, it's just like you learn to balance a little bit of that. So I have made other things with that optimism. I make it into something that it could be more meaningful. And it's not so much about me, myself, and I, and this belongs to me. And I come across sometimes like a smart little like a smart ass, because I tend to, when I speak, I tend to speak out of this authority of something that I have lived already. I don't like quoting people, because when I don't want to live in a life full of quotes. I want to say what I say because I already lived and experienced it. So sometimes when people hear me, they go, oh, she knows everything. It's like, well, I don't want to sound too much, but if I say it, it's because I already went through it. So there's a little bit of that in me that I try to tone down. But then again, this is me. I have Sun and Jupiter together, and Mercury. What else can I do,
Well, you have to do you. I mean, that's we all, but there's no, that is it. I'm curious, when I was talking about the whatever sign your Jupiter is in being like the domain of consciousness that you are like God or goddess of, how would you so for you, it's Taurus for you, right? So, and I think you just described in some ways, but is there anything else you would add to how
Yeah.
that sign, how that domain is really something that
It's tactile. So I understand very much that I am in my body and I am incarnated, and I am really learning how to value this incarnation, because I am in itself a very spiritual person. But I think that if I leave it into the spiritual realm or the emotional one, I'm not really going to get it. So it has become very much about understanding the conditions of really being in this body and being alive. So food is very important. The way things are around me, very important. So beauty, it's extremely important in my life. I am an artist again, and everything that I do has to have this component of having something that has harmony in it, whether it's a color or a sound. So it is a very sensual. It's completely sensual. I'm extremely sensual and very, very I have, my senses are very acute, so I can listen to many things, see many things, because this is like the frequencies that I use. So it's a very terrestrial. I'm super, super on the earth, but I almost always feeling that it's my spirit that is enjoying this. It's a very like joyful, and it's super happy joy, like dancing, like all that kind of like perfumes, things that I feel like I really like that. Stones, I love stones. So it's very terrestrial.
I think when you were just saying that, it made me think about this, because I have Jupiter in Pisces, and when I'm doing Pisces things, that's when I feel most joyful. And I think like if we can all remember that with Jupiter, like the sign and house aspects, however, but let's just start with the sign. It's simple, right? When you surround yourself and build and create and sort of live in the environment of that sign, it naturally opens up your heart. It naturally opens up your spirit, naturally opens you up to want to receive more. And so I feel like this idea of choosing that, it's like, and letting that be the path that you take through life, it almost naturally opens up this thing that we're calling positivity, because, and even if you don't like the word positivity, because it's your natural frequency, like that. So when you were just describing that, everything about you lit up, but it did. That's a beautiful thing, because when you're in that space, even when hard things are happening, like when you're in that space, like it shifts everything.
But nothing for me will really finish and complete if I cannot share the experience. Third house, if I cannot really go out there and tell you guys what it is, then what's the point of having all the most beautiful things if I cannot just go out and tell somebody about this experience? And it's all about that, like learning, gathering, amassing stuff, not to have. I don't like to hoard, but I like to be able to bring inside, transform, and then give back like that. And something that that helped me a lot to understand what abundance was. And it's not about having a lot of money in the bank, but it's about having the freedom to be able to enjoy every moment and do whatever I want at that moment, but do it meaningful way. So
and it's not just the freedom to enjoy it, like you got to choose to enjoy it. And that's the part of the thing about Jupiter, like we all have the choice of whether or not we want to enjoy any part or all of our lives. Like that's, no one forces that upon us. And I feel like one thing in working with Jupiter or choosing Jupiter first is that's I think one of the hurdles. You have to face your own tendency to not want to enjoy things. Like sometimes we don't,
Yeah. Also, another thing is like I like to always sort of like work with the polarity. So I also am aware when I exaggerate. I'm super, oh my God, sometimes I go, really, Monika? And I go, a little bit. I go, no, come on. Like I know when I'm exaggerating, and I go, just say the truth. And I say, well, what's the truth? This is what happened. And so I know that and I always make fun. And I said, if I want to really tell a story like that with so much flowers, I might as well put it into art and not make
perfect
it into like a metaphor of something else. But I'm aware when I can be bigger than everything and everything that I say or everything that I believe. But it's always kind of like coming into a position where I have to measure myself, either with food and because it's all about indulgence for me.
Yeah. Oh, I would imagine. But the thing about exaggerating too, this is, at least for me, the Jupiter part of us wants to convey the truth, the feeling that we're having, and so it's not so much about the literal words, it's about what can I do to get you to feel what I'm feeling. And so sometimes that exaggeration, like sometimes it's not such a bad thing. Sometimes we're just like, when you feel something big inside, you want, oh my God, you want other people to feel it too. And so that can sometimes happen. And then more literal people can take it as, okay, you're making all that stuff up. But I think Jupiter, it's about the truth, but not the truth in the sense of sort of like, look it up in the dictionary, here's what the word means. The truth that resonates through your whole being, and you just know that it's true. And sometimes that doesn't come through facts, that oftentimes comes through a shared experience. And so exaggeration is just one of our ways, I think, that we try to invite people sometimes into our experience.
But it's also like the idea of the pilgrim that goes far away to remote lands and then tries to convince people that what he or she is thinking or feeling, it's something worth trying. So it's also like the salesperson that is always, I feel myself, everybody says, oh, you're so good at sales. I can sell anything.
Because you believe in it.
Yeah. And I said, and I know immediately when galleries or somebody that I put my work, that I know immediately within 5 seconds if they're going to be able to sell my work, because I know immediately if they understand it, they want to go deep inside, they want to connect to it. If they don't, I go, don't even try. You're not even going to do this, right? So yeah, it's a question of believing something and make other people believe. That's what a good salesperson is, just making the other one believe that they need that,
Yeah. Of course, also there's a fine line between that being helpful and that being, on the other side too. So as always with Jupiter, just because you can go further and just because you can get someone to convert to your way doesn't always mean it's the right way to, and we're all very familiar with the shadow side of Jupiter.
I have a good relationship with my Saturn there. I mean, I feel that there's some sort of like, not restraint, but structure in my part that it's so good. I'm very structured person. So, just it's very important for me to understand that, which part of myself is speaking, which one is saying the stuff.
Well, yeah. And with Jupiter, I mean, it's important that we do know our limits, because the Jupiter part of us sometimes can, it's so unlimited that we can forget sometimes that like we actually need to eat, or we actually need to sleep, or maybe that actually is too much for us, or too much, these sorts of things. So it's important to keep in mind. But in this talk, I wanted to focus more on the other side, which you did such a good job of kind of really opening up that space for just like.
What I have to add, the last bit, sorry, is that because Uranus has been there all this year, it's kind of amazing, because I feel it's not done yet, of course, but I feel that the way I used to like envision my life, the way I was relating to that vision and that scope, is completely different right now. Things change so dramatically for me. So I still don't know which way I'm going, and it's the first so like, oh, what am I gonna go? Because I'm actually enjoying the fact that I know that wherever is gonna be that thing, it's going to be great. But I just have to really ride on the wave. And when it arrived, it was like, oh no, I don't like this situation. But now it's like, I mean, there's no other choice. So I had to like embrace it, and it's been a great thing. So I can't wait to see what happens, like how I am the person, like in a year. I just can't wait to look back and go, oh my God, this was fantastic. So I write every day, and sometimes I go back and I go, oh, this is really developing into something very interesting. So I'm excited with all this Uranian energy on top of it.
The cutest thing you just said is you can't wait to look back and see how fantastic it was. Like your forecast is fantastic. So, I mean, so before, I'm sure Linda's about probably to turn us off here in a second, but I just wanted to ask if you would, so for all the people who might be thinking, hey, I'd like to live more Jupiter, I'd like to bring that more out in myself. Maybe they want to choose that as their planet moving to the first. Maybe they just want to like open up that part of themselves. Like what, just kind of 3 simple things would you say that you would suggest that they focus on first, or even maybe the questions they ask themselves or the mantra they put out there? What would you say to someone who says, hey, I really want to be more Jupiter?
Well, I would say whenever they have an idea that is not correct, like not very Jupiter, is what is the worst thing that could happen? It's one thing that I always say to myself if I find any like Plutonian, fear around. What's the worst thing? So I start making it up, like, oh, this is what could happen. So it's just like giving myself a chance to fly, even though I don't know if I'm going to fly. Just let's try. The worst that could happen, I can fall down and and bruise myself, and then I go to the bathroom and heal myself. So it's just like, what's the worst that could happen? Because if you don't try, how do you know? How do you know? So it's really, you need a little bit of boldness, like like that, and just go for it. And then come back and write about it, because at the very end, it's the experience.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I would just say, don't underestimate yourself. We all do that. We all do it. Don't cut yourself short. Don't sell yourself short. Like we are so much more than we even know, and I truly believe that. And Jupiter is a part of us that wants us to explore and to find it. And you're right. There's no way to find out without trying it.
Without jumping.
Yeah, no way. So awesome. Thanks so much, Monika.
This was fun.
I'm going to stop the share. There we are. Anyone else have anything before we wrap up?
I have a question, Tara. Sorry, I'm losing.
Yeah, no.
Just looking at Monica's chart, I noticed there was a Star of David, and I don't know if I think that's a Star of David. It's a 6-pointed star, and I was wondering if you had any. I don't know. I just felt like it was benefic, that it was an aspect or a figure that reflects a lot of who Monika seems to be in her light.
I don't know. Monika, do you have a?
Oh, I know what she refers, because it's making the trine. It's making 2 trines. With my south node and my north node. So yeah, I had somebody told me that I had a star of David or something, and that made me feel like I had a lot of responsibility to not mess it up. So if I have, because this is one thing also I learned, that when you have a lot of talents, sometimes you can be more procrastinator. because you're not having such a hard time. So it made me work even double because I have to be very appreciative that I have a lot of things coming my way. Some people have it so hard. So that's why gratefulness is becoming important for me. So yeah, I'm aware of it, but because of I'm aware of it, I work every day. So it's not that it's going to be taken away, but I can make so much use of it in a better, positive way and give to others.
Yeah. I think, Monica, I mean, you're right. Anytime a trine, because we know how easy it is to get lazy with a trine, right? Because a trine just kind of happens without having to do much. But in the process, the thing is that, then you don't end up actualizing what's actually available. I always think with these things, like you mentioned about having more talents, I always think that it's not that some of us necessarily have more talents, but some of us are more aware and able to work with them, And so I think Jupiter oftentimes signifies things that we can be aware of and work with now. And you're absolutely right. That's a huge gift. And with the trine to the south node, and then addition, because it still links in everything in the north node as well. It's like Jupiter is this, past to present, piece that continues through. So,
yeah, for me, it's almost like a vehicle also because it's very interesting to have the sun conjuncts Jupiter and then my moon to Neptune, which is, for me, Neptune is all about really faith, truly believing in things, not the way Jupiter believes, but it's completely opening to it. So I feel that I'm very lucky because I have those two things next to me.
Well, and I think with the Jupiter opposing the moon, it's the moon rules your north node, right? So again, I'm saying it's interesting, and I'm not saying this is true for everything, but almost everywhere we go in your chart goes to Jupiter. It's like we almost can't shake Jupiter loose. So I feel very fortunate that I got you to be a volunteer today, because what better for you are Jupiter than someone who truly in the natal chart is.
I just saw it. I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah. Anybody else? Carolyn, did you have anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Monica. This is
Thank you, Carolyn.
Excellent. Just excellent.
Yes, Tara. Look, we're open-ended in this meeting, so please do feel free to go a bit longer if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, great. I just wanted to say that it's been a fantastic meeting, and just wanted to talk a little bit about Saturn, and perhaps Saturn brings a little bit of balance, because the over-exuberance of Jupiter, I mean, I think, I mean, there has to be a limit at some point. So starting with the fire signs, we've got Mars, Leo, Mars, Sun, and Jupiter, right? So Mars is our instinctive self that puts into action the desires coming from the soul. And then Leo is our creative self-actualization. And then Jupiter is the intuitive, natural self, which is the expansion of our consciousness. Mm-hmm. So then why do we need Saturn to come in and restrict that a little bit? The only thing I can think of is that Saturn is our incarnation. It's our karma and our responsibility. So sometimes Saturn will change our path a little bit and get that exuberance to contract a little bit. What do you think of that?
I definitely agree with that. No question. And that's why earlier on when I said Saturn in the first house is definitely making itself known, But I guess I feel like the two, and especially for Monica, because she's got the Jupiter Saturn are in a sextile with each other.
Yes.
So that to me speaks to like there's an opportunity to work together. And I know we oftentimes relegate Saturn to the part that's holding us back or down, but it's actually the part that builds us up, that makes us stronger. And I think that sometimes Jupiter on its own, it's so lofty and it rises so much above that it's not anchored into something that's actually tangible, and I think that, at least I feel like, especially for Monica with Jupiter and that Sun Mercury being in Taurus, like she's meant to embody things. She's not meant to just space out in the spiritual ethereal realms. you know, with like potentials. Like she's meant to show how they can actually harness and happen. And if you want to harness and make things happen, you know, you want Saturn, and you want Saturn strongly placed. And I feel like that's what she chose in this, to be born at that particular time.
Oh yes, I mean every chart is unique, and we've chosen things for very real reasons, evolutionary reasons. But just to end off this part of the conversation, that Jupiter becomes tempered by Saturn. Just like Saturn also tempers Uranus, because Uranus, what's the word of expansion?
Well, it does, because the other thing, I mean, Uranus can just shatter and break things apart.
Exactly.
Ending up like, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, you know. And so Saturn holds a big strong anchor to like, this part of the past is good. It works. We don't want to throw this part out, you know. So, and I think and it brings also another word, I would say, not just tempers, but also matures, you know. It matures those energies, and, you know,
exactly.
the more fiery things, and even the more airy things, you know, like sometimes they run away with us. We run away with them. Like we forget, forget to come down to earth.
Absolutely. Well, I was just thinking that, you know, Jupiter is a fire sign, and fire spreads and things catch on fire, and I guess the water is absolutely necessary there. But what I was going to say about Uranus is that it becomes tempered by Saturn, because otherwise Uranus becomes very threatening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I will just do whatever I want because I want social change, and therefore I'm going to, you know, go crazy. But it's much more constructive and perhaps even more powerful to have that Saturn working with it, so that it doesn't threaten other people.
Yeah, I don't know, Linda, for you, or for you, Monica, as well. Like when I think about both Saturn and Jupiter as being wisdom, you know, both of them.
Absolutely.
And to me, when you have them working together, that is like, I mean, talk about a holistic wisdom. You know, it's exactly. All of it coming together. Yeah.
Beautiful. Lovely. So, would you like to wind down, or?
Yeah, I mean, if no one else has anything in particular to ask or to say, I feel good with where we're at. Monica, is there anything that you feel has been left out?
Not really. I think it was very complete, and I'm very grateful again for being here.
Me too. I feel the same way. Thank you, Linda, for these meetings.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tara. Thank you also to Olive, who is the monitor for our Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And Monika, thank you so much. You provided some amazing feedback. And Carolyn, thank you also for your questions. So we'll see you next time, Tara, and thank you from all of us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.